Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brodie Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. Detoxing is a hot topic these days. We are swimming in literally tens of thousands of toxic chemicals in everything from the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the processing, the packaging that delivers it, the products we use on our bodies, even our furniture and the walls of our own homes. My guest today is my friend and colleague, Bridgit Danner. Bridgit and I have been running in the same circles for over a decade. She is a licensed acupuncturist since 2004 and a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner since 2015. After losing everything to toxic mold, Bridgit now educates about toxins and coaches women on how to detoxify through a functional approach. She is the host of an upcoming DIY Detox Summit, which is a free online summit happening June 3rd through 10th, 2019. So if you're listening contemporaneously, you can head to brodiewelch.com/podcast and sign up. There's a lot of former guests from this podcast who will be lending their expertise, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great gems of wisdom in the whole thing. But today, we're going to delve into some of the basics of detoxing, why it's important or not important, and what we need to know about toxic mold. So Bridgit, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Hi, Brodie. I guess we have been running in the same circles for over a decade. I like that line. That was great.
Yeah, I think we originally met in like an Oregon acupuncture meeting or something, and then just found ourselves in a lot of the same...
More and more in common.
Yeah, many overlapping circles. So first off, could you walk us through what does it mean to detox? Like, aren't our liver and kidneys and our digestive systems and our immune systems perpetually working for us to keep us free of toxins?
Sure. Yeah, they definitely are, or they want to be, sometimes due to some other imbalances in our body, we're not pooping well, we're not sweating well, but ideally, yeah, our body wants to be detoxing. Certainly is working every day. The issue is more, the modern life that we're living and the additional challenge we put on the body. And then, plus other things that could be blocking detox, like parasites and Hashimoto's and gut infections. So to me, I guess the word detox could have lots of meanings, right? It can be like alcohol and drug detox, or it can be like master cleanse, or all sorts of things. But to me, it's first of all, learning about toxins in the environment and how to reduce that exposure, and then how to gently support your body in its own detox pathways and give it what it needs to do its job.
Yeah, that's so important because our bodies are working hard, and at the same time, the demands that we're putting on them are like they've never evolved to see, right? Like literally there's new chemicals coming at us all the time, and it's a pretty heavy load out there. And not to mention if the organs of detoxification are compromised, that it's all the harder. And so what are the potential effects? Like, what could we be experiencing physically or emotionally or mentally that might lead us to want to do some detoxing?
I mean, I guess I'll say the tricky answer, and what I feel like is a simpler answer. So the tricky answer is a lot of overlapping symptoms to other things, right? Fatigue, brain fog, skin rashes, muscle weakness, muscle twitching, poor digestion, hormone imbalance, poor sleep. So many things can become dysregulated in your body from having toxins, kind of gumming up the works, the communication between your cells and, elimination and all that stuff. So I guess what happened to me and what I advise to other people, because your audience is probably, doing their best to live a healthy life. But if you feel like you're participating in a lot of healthy habits, but there's just something that's not working, you're just still so tired all the time, or, have these mystery symptoms. That's really, I think everyone should be aware of detox and detoxing, but to me, like, it's time to really do some testing or get more serious about toxins when there's a health mystery going on.
So there's not necessarily like a test where you could be like, oh, yeah, like this shows up and therefore that's indicated. It's more like we're going to look at how we're feeling in relationship to how much energy we're putting into staying healthy and go like, yeah, that's me. I could use some help.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, there are tests. There you can test for heavy metals and mold and Lyme and chemicals in your body and glyphosate in your body. So you can test that. It doesn't necessarily right off the bat, correlate with symptoms. So those are going to be maybe some other tests you could run or just symptoms you list off. So, how is it affecting your guts? You could test that, but you don't necessarily have to. There's so many wonderful tests out there in the world that you could run. And then there's some other like blood markers for inflammation, for example, that may suggest toxicity, but then you don't know the source unless you would do some further testing. So it can be a bit complicated, but doing some good intake like you do in your clinic. And like what happened for me with mold is they asked about changes in my environment, and that gave us some clues for some things to look for. So yeah, I think sometimes you have to look at the situation, and you can't always, right? Some people get heavy metal poisoning and they don't know where it came from because they don't think, oh, it's in my pan or it's in my lipstick or whatever. But
Or I grew up in the Northeast, right? And there's certain places where it's like there's just like you don't necessarily think about it because it's just what you knew. It's just like the paint on your house or the rain, the air pollution that was where it was when you were.
Yeah, exactly. Someone was just telling me that they were exposed to what did she say? Aluminum or mercury or something from her parents, like being a smoker. She feels like she was born with heavy metal poisoning. I hadn't really heard about that before. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be tricky to track down the source of exposure, but sometimes not. Sometimes you can suddenly, put two and two together and be like, oh, yeah, I was exposed to something there.
Well, there's also the issue of the fact that all these tiny little micro doses of things that put a toxic burden on our bodies. It's like maybe in and of themselves, like the phthalates from your body products, plus the aluminum cookware or the nonstick cookware, plus the flame retardants in your couch. It's like maybe it's not just one thing, but it's an impact of a cumulative effect that a lot of these things may be having, in which case it's like, yeah, so not a bad idea to support the body in detoxifying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Joe Pizzorno, who's also from the Northwest, has done a lot in this field. And he has some great examples about how, say like a certain heavy metal is causing insulin resistance. And then like a certain hormone disruptor is causing, like blood sugar to be dysregulated in some other way. So they can certainly like pile on top of each other and sometimes just actually like interact in the body and increase the effect of each other. So yeah, it's something that isn't really, understood much in mainstream media. And definitely, it's easy to make that argument, oh, it's just a little bit here and there, but actually like chemically or biochemically in your body, it is like this whole big science experiment that's being conducted for the first time ever, really.
Yes. On everyone.
On all of us. Yeah. So I think it's just, it can be scary, but it's just little by little learning and wherever you're at, getting more knowledgeable.
You mentioned toxic mold, and I know that part of how I introduced you is that you lost everything to toxic mold. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and also just like, kind of what toxic mold is. Like when I first learned that this was a thing years ago, it sounded like something out of a B-grade horror movie. And I was like, really? We're going to freak out about toxic mold? But then I started seeing patients with fatigue and brain fog and neurological symptoms that would dramatically go away when they were away from their homes. And then putting it together that like, wow, it's actually something that my house is contributing to. And people who have like either moved or, just done, like mainly moved and seen a reduction in symptoms. So I'd love to just, first of all, like hear your story and also just how common is toxic mold and like who should be concerned?
Yeah, well, I'll say like I had it was a little similar to you, Dave Asprey put out that moldy movie. I don't know, a year or two before I found out about my case. And I didn't watch it when it came out, we're all busy. So putting
Yeah,
it
like,
in,
why would you, right? I mean, like,
I was like, that's so
there's plenty of
obscure.
things.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll never run into that. So I don't, I just didn't get, yeah, I thought it was such an outlying issue. And then maybe 2015 or something, but I got sick, ended up having strep throat for like first time in 20 years and had to get on antibiotics for the first time in 20 years. And it really knocked me out. And then when that was over, I just wasn't recovering. I was super fatigued. I started going in for like IV therapy to try to give me a boost, but it didn't do anything. And so finally I was at the naturopathic college in Portland. I was like, you need to figure this out. Like you need to test me for something else or whatever. And they said, well, what about like your home? What's different? And one thing was that we had a very wet fall and we had some moisture in our basement that was always sort of a moist environment. So I mentioned that and I mentioned to my husband and he was like, yeah, I want to test. I've always wondered about that. And I knew enough to know like this wasn't really a box I wanted to open. So I was like, but we did it. And we found
Wow. It's really interesting that there's resistance exactly where you needed to be looking.
Yeah. And I think it's really common. I'll tell you as the story goes and I hear it from so many other people because when you're so fatigued, I mean, I'll tell you more about my symptoms too. Like the first, I was fatigued, my immune system was off. So we found out we had, we had a house inspector. So that I think that's a good step if people are wondering and they'll look for moisture and they can take different samples and, see where your gutters are leaking and stuff like that. So we found that out, but we didn't know much about proper remediation of the home. So we hired a contractor to do some of the most like clear work that needed to be done, but we just did everything wrong. And we really spread mold toxins throughout the house. We were still living there. And this was right when I had moved my practice and like gone online. So I was home all the time. And I got so much sicker from disrupting all this mold in our basement. Then I was like, I couldn't remember anything, Brodie. Like every short-term thought I had to think it like 5 times to remember what I was doing. I would like put my phone in like the spice drawer and like just stupid stuff. Like my brain wasn't working and my eyelid was twitching and things were getting worse. So then we had to move out and luckily we had a place to go. And that's, a big struggle for people or they don't know where to go. And sometimes I tell people, you have to humble yourself. And this is a time in your life you need to ask for help. And when you're so tired and your brain isn't working, like the last thing you want to do is like move and figure out all this complicated stuff. And again, my husband really pushed it. He's like, well, we can't be here. So we're going. So yeah, we moved out and we ended up doing a ton more remediation in our home. And, finally decided like, we really started to get it then. Like this toxin, it's not just the mold, it's the toxins it emits. And they really sink into fibers like in your clothes and your couch and your rugs and stuff. So, if you become sick from it, it's pretty hard to go back to that environment without completely, gutting it and changing everything out. And at this point, we just didn't even want to take the risk anymore. So we repaired the home really, really well, but we decided not to live in it anymore and to sell it.
I can't even imagine, first of all, the level of brain fog that you were experiencing or the level of short-term memory issues. And then that how daunting it is. Yeah. Like when you're already feeling like life is hard to uproot your entire residence and be somewhere else. It's like, that must've just been, well, a really big deal.
Yeah. It's a very, transformative time in your life. And I think that people, and there's other chronic illnesses certainly, but I have a mold Facebook group and I'm in a couple others and people will ask these kinds of questions and I'm pretty honest with them because I know where they're at. They don't want to move. They don't want to deal with this. They don't have any money. And, I just say like, this is just a choice you have to make. You have to figure it out. Like we understand this sucks. Yeah. And just to go through that, it's like going through a flood or a hurricane or something, it affects you. So, but as you know, like every journey with our health can be really a chance for growth spiritually. And, so I definitely came out of it with some wisdom, but at the time, it was horrible. I hated it.
Of course. Yeah. Right. And another fucking growth opportunity. And
Yeah.
yeah, really
Leave
not,
me alone.
not so fun. But so toxic mold is just one of many things that people need to be aware of that. And it's obviously a pretty traumatic one to be facing. What other kinds of things should we be thinking about in our homes, in our home environment, that would be steps towards making it a less toxic place?
So in your kitchen, I would say be thinking about plastics, reducing them as much as possible, especially when they're going to come into contact with heat or oils. And, many of us have reduced that, but we can usually go even further because those plastics do shed and melt and all that stuff. So then you're getting exposed to chemicals there. So that's one area. And then in the kitchen, also food quality, that's often an area people are aware of, but sometimes people think about, oh, I'm keto or I'm this or that, but really think about like toxins in your food. That's where we get a big dose of pesticides and colorants and those fats that have been processed. So
everything the animal that you eat eats, or anything, if you eat dairy,
exposed
that
to,
like, yeah,
yeah.
anything, like all of the conditions, if you can imagine like a factory farm, like all that stuff is going into the products that people may be consuming. And we did a couple of episodes with Alex Stewart from your Low Tox Life, which people can check out if they're interested in more kind of home detox tips. Where like one thing that I learned from her is like being reminded that plastic lines the paper cups from coffee shops, like
it sure does. Yep. And the lid. Yep. So there's so many places we can reduce. And, frankly, you can't be perfect, but you can reduce and you can think about your food quality in terms of toxicity instead of just like staying on the latest fad diet. So that's some stuff to think about in the kitchen. And then in the bathroom, be thinking about safer cleaning products. You can really clean your home with just like baking soda and essential oils and vinegar. And there's so many like prepared ones now by good brands. So getting that stuff out, just changing out your beauty products. We put often dozens of beauty products on ourselves in a day, believe it or not. So just thinking about, are there heavy metals in my deodorant? Does my beauty company check for heavy metals? Because most don't. Fragrance is a big issue. Almost everything in mainstream production is fragranced, and that is an endocrine disruptor, a hormone disruptor, and an obesogen, and can alter the way you process fat and make fat cells and grow fat cells. So, some people are really struggling with their weight and they don't know why. And this can be an area to look at is toxin exposure.
Yeah. So on that note, if you're curious about reading your own labels, people at home, that looking for fragrance or parfum, that is code for potentially thousands of chemicals that could be hormone disrupting.
Yes. Yes. I'll just give you a few more, which is you mentioned kind of like building materials and stuff. So yeah, like think about when you buy furniture and rugs, like what you're bringing into the home, because those are major purchases and they can off gas for a lot longer than you think. A rug may smell for a month, but it's actually off gassing for 10 years, 20 years. So can things like particle board or flooring. So this is a big conversation, but just like as you go to make those purchases, a fault I've had, Brodie, is like I get excited about decorating and remodeling, and you just kind of want to buy things because they look right. But to take a step back and think about, okay, what is this made out of? How could this impact my health? Even little things like a lot of people buy blackout curtains because it's good for your circadian rhythm, but like they're often backed with like this plastic stuff that really off gases. So yeah, I won't get into like all the purchases, but I would just say if you're making a big purchase, just think about it with a mattress or whatever it is. Think about what it's made out of, look into it a bit. And there can be some greenwashing in that industry. And so you have to dig a little bit to really understand what your mattress is made out of.
If you've got a healthy curiosity, you want to know how you can be doing right by your body and how to live a more mindful, streamlined life in accordance with your values. While I love that you tune into the show every week, are you taking action? If not, why not? Here are the top 3 roadblocks that could be holding you back. 1, thinking that knowing is doing. They're different things. Knowing the properties of herbs is different than actually taking them. Knowing how to change a habit is different than actually changing up your routine. Knowing is the first step, but the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 100th steps involve action. Number 2, thinking that because you're smart and used to being successful, that you need to do it all yourself. This one dogged me for years as an independent-minded overachiever. That is, until I realized that 1, I can't see my own blind spots, and 2, I don't know what I don't know. Now, I'd much rather work with a guide who can point out the shortcut for the path I want to travel rather than get lost in the woods alone. Not only is it way easier, but I'm more likely to show up for myself if I've told my coach or my mastermind partners what I'm trying to do. Reason number 3, thinking that you don't have the money. What we spend money on is a reflection of what we're prioritizing. Maybe it's time to prioritize you. I'm opening up my calendar for a handful of one-on-one coaching clients. I've helped thousands of women break up with stress, optimize their habits, mood, hormones, weight, and vitality with integrative body-mind tools from Chinese medicine, yoga, neuroscience, coaching, and ancient wisdom. Just as importantly, I pour my heart into each of my clients, and you will feel that love in every single interaction. If you're ready to feel more calm and confident in your own skin, start feeling younger every year, feeling like you're at the center of your own life rather than just getting through it, and feel loved and supported in the process, head over to the Work With Me page at brodiewelch.com and apply to work with me one-on-one. That's Brodie with an IE and Welch with a CH. Now back to the show. One thing I learned from Tom Maltaire in taking a class with him is that the rate of off-gassing, it drops off tremendously. So like the first few days of like that new product smell, or, like that, it just like leave it outside. Like don't even take it into your home for like the first week that you have it, if you're going to bring something like that in, because yes, it will continue to off-gas, but it will just, if you were to chart it, you'll avoid the worst of it if you give it a little time before taking it into your house.
Yeah, if you smell something, take it outside. That's a great tip. Because again, there's some things we can't avoid being plastic or vinyl, or that we just sort of buy accidentally. And then we're like, oh, this smells. So yeah, just leave it to air out for a little bit.
Why are so many detox experts advocating saunas?
Sauna, I love sauna.
Me too. It's so lovely.
It's so great. Sauna has just such a long list of benefits. Detox is frankly only one of them, but you can get all sorts of things out of your body through sweating, and some will come through the sweat, and some will just go through the body into the urine and the digestive system too. So you're not only just sweating it out, but it can clear heavy metals and mold toxins and chemicals like pesticides. So it's pretty amazing for detox. And often what happens when you've been exposed to toxins is your cellular energy has been disrupted. And a lot of cellular repair can happen when you're exposed to that higher level of heat. These heat shock proteins kick in and they repair damaged cells, and it's pretty incredible. So it can be great for energy. It reduces stress a lot. It puts you in the parasympathetic mode, which many of us aren't in very often. So it helps you sleep. It can help you lose weight, just so much stuff. So it was something that we used when we were at our sickest, just at like various gyms. We were basically homeless. I also say, we now own a sauna, and it's a great investment, but just start where you're at, just get some use in. And if you can't tolerate it well, because you're quite sick, just do 5 minutes or do what you can do. And there's some ways to kind of maximize it. You can do glutathione before you go in and binders as you come out, and you can take electrolytes. So there's some ways to really make it even more therapeutic. But in general, I would say just, get hot, get in the sauna, or get out in the sun this summer and sweat. It's not quite the same, but sunlight has a bunch of benefits. There's someone speaking about that on our summit.
Sunlight is so underrated and so important for so many things. Do you think hot yoga does a similar thing to saunas? Like I know that like not all sweat is created equal, right? When we're sweating with exercise, that we're not necessarily in parasympathetic mode, and so we're not
Right.
necessarily moving toxins out of the body. What's your take?
Yeah, I would be curious to hear more about that. I used to do a lot of hot yoga. I really like it. I mean, you certainly sweat a lot, but yeah, there's some truth to like when you're relaxed and sweating, it's a little different process than when you're, yoga is still you're under some stress when physically while sweating. So I think it's still beneficial, but it's probably like a little different. I'd love to read some more
I'd love
information
to be
on
part of that study. I would volunteer to to be
yeah,
measured
really.
before and after.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
my
Yeah, I
favorite.
like it. I think you can overdo it. You can get a little addicted, and some people go to hot yoga like 5 days a week. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe 3 days a week.
Yeah,
It'd
yeah.
be okay.
Well, and again, depending on constitution, right? If that person is
True.
already dealing with heat conditions, then doing more hot, sweaty stuff isn't necessarily medicine. I am wondering about the side effects that can come with detoxing. Things like headaches and, just feeling crappy. Like anytime I've done a cleanse, or not, maybe not anytime, but that's certainly something you can run into, just being really low energy or just feeling kind of not awesome as you're mobilizing toxins out. So, what are some tips there?
Yeah, yeah. So I generally am a proponent of, really trying to not get into the state where you're overdoing it. A lot of what's brought up on our detox summit is that, you need to have these detox pathways open. We talked about that earlier. You need to be pooping, maybe even 2, 3 times a day. Especially if you're doing a detox, because you need to get that stuff out. You need to be sweating. Some people with like thyroid condition aren't really sweating. You need to be deep breathing, you need to be moving your body. So make sure like those things are happening while you do any kind of detox. And then just kind of find that edge. Like we mentioned the sauna, like maybe some people can't tolerate a lot of sauna. I could always tolerate it, but I've had some clients who cannot. So sometimes you find that edge by going over it, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's the limit there.
Yeah, and then you can come back. But yeah, when like, I used to run group cleanse out of our clinic, and yeah, you can certainly get headaches from like coming off caffeine. That's a pretty common one. So I'd always encourage people to cut down the caffeine slowly before the cleanse. And let's see, what else can you do to minimize? Like you can do dry brushing to kind of keep lymph moving. So yeah, opening up the detox pathways and then just like not going too fast. There's no prize for going too fast. And often those sorts, as you feel bad, that's toxins being released and your body not being able to process, and then you're getting inflammation. And those toxins are probably reabsorbing because you can't keep up with them. So it's never really a good thing to feel bad from detoxing. You usually have to back off a bit. There be some exceptions. I mean, I guess again, like I think you can kind of try to walk the edge, but if you're doing something that just leaves you feeling awful, you are recirculating toxins and now you feel awful. So
Yeah.
some practitioners even, I think, Brodie, push it too hard. And I'm not a fan of that. I think, and when I was my sickest, like I did some chelation therapy. Oh God, that didn't go well for me. So if something isn't a fit for you, it's okay to say no. And if you've been very like exposed to mold or Lyme or something, you can become very sensitive to every kind of substance. So if you're one of those people, you might just like barely be able to detox, you barely be able to take anything. And that's okay if that's where you're at. And you just have to go incredibly slowly.
I think maybe I should have asked this question earlier, but can you give us a sense of what it means to detox? Like that, that we've talked about why it's important. We've talked about how being, that using a sauna can help. We've talked about how even ways that we can add to that, making that sauna more helpful. Things like glutathione, which helps, it is one of the master detoxification aids out there and binders, right? Binders to help get the toxins that have been released out of the body, usually through pooping. But what are we actually doing? Like
What's
that, or
happening?
yeah, or what? Yeah, I'd like to know kind of like there's lots of different strategies to detox the body. What's your favorite approach to take?
Oh, strategies? Are you okay? I thought you were going to say, like, how does the body
Well,
detox?
yeah, that too.
Okay.
That would be an
That's
excellent
just where you're going.
background. But like for example, like I know that there's everything from just, people cleaning up their diets and eliminating the sugar and the caffeine and the alcohol and meat and wheat and things like that and dairy and all the kind of doing that for a few weeks, or the traditional Ayurvedic panchakarma strategy where you're eating khichdi and doing, and sweating every day and doing self massage and doing, medicated enemas and, things like that. Just that there's lots of different strategies that come from different traditions and that I think
Yes.
have different effects. And so just curious, like, in your opinion, like what's a good fit for people, or, or like granted everyone's different, but where do you like to start?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. It depends where you're at. Like if you are just living like kind of eating a conventional diet, everything we're talking about is new to you, then maybe start with improving your food quality and doing maybe a short-term cleanse of things like alcohol, coffee, dairy, sugar, wheat. I mean, just taking those things out for people can be like profound because those are substances that many of us are abusing daily. So if that's kind of where you're starting, maybe start with that. Start with some of the things we talked about in the house with like plastics or thinking about your beauty products. Like you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So just, start where you are. And then there are people who are in a very different situation who already know they have Lyme disease or just found out they have heavy metals. And then sometimes you need a much more specific detox route, like different binders you mentioned earlier. Like binders are substances that structurally or like electrically attract toxins and help them move out with your bowel movement, and they attract to different substances. So if you do know what you're toxic with, so to speak, you can get more specific. You may need to work with a practitioner because it can get a little more complicated, and you need some help with the detox reactions. So, and then in between of that, like between those basics and the really specific stuff is like kind of the things like sauna or doing like a green drink in the morning or doing some dry brushing. There's a lot of things that you can do, getting out in sunlight that are helpful in detoxifying and pretty safe. And then just generally like it's that everyday detox, but it's just like support your body in moving lymph, giving your liver the nutrients it needs. There's a lot in there that
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like though, to summarize, that we can be living a lower tox lifestyle by addressing room by room, that what's going into our bodies on a regular basis by osmosis, and by what we're eating. But it comes down to the absolute basics, right? It comes down to moving our lymph every day. It comes down to nutrientifying. It comes down to being in a state where our bodies can detoxify and assisting, and then potentially going through more things like dry brushing, self massage, and then going through periods where we intentionally support the detox processes that are occurring all the time, and maybe doing something a bit more intentional or a bit more specific depending on our particular diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm just a big fan of education. That's why I'm always organizing all these summits,
Yeah.
whether or not whether or not I like it at times like this. But just, I think it's just important to learn for wherever you're at. Maybe you have a child that you're concerned about, or you've got a rash you're concerned about. And just like, the universe will deliver like some information that you need when you open up your eyes to it and your ears to it. So if you just come like to the summit and find out like a couple things that you can change in your home or like explore in your health, that's fantastic. We're all journeying and learning about our health. Our bodies are always changing. Our environments are changing. So just come and learn and just try to enjoy it as much as you can. It can sound a little scary, but it also can, the benefits are huge because your energy can really improve. Your skin can clear up. You can lose weight. It's the things everyone wants, right?
Absolutely. And just, it doesn't have to be scary if we recognize like what I really appreciate the work that you're doing in making all this information accessible, because it really is, there's a lot to it and there's lots of different strategies. It's easy to get overwhelmed. But if we take the attitude of like, I'm going to listen and learn and see what one small step in the direction of better might be, that can be one way of just steering in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Bridgit, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And I really appreciate your wisdom and you putting together this summit. I will have a link to it in the show notes if people want to register. It's free while it's happening, June 3rd through 10th. And just thank you again.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love your interview style. I love being on your podcast. So thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodiewelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.